Right now, AI is everywhere, and it's being pitched as the answer to every single problem. You can write faster, strategize better, scale easier than ever. But just because AI can do something doesn't mean that it should. And just because somebody tells you that AI can do something doesn't mean that you can do it just as well and effectively and scalably for your business. So in this episode, Phil and I are going to actually sit down and discuss where to draw the line when it comes to AI. Phil, AI really is just the kind of perceived answer to everything right now, and there's a lot of noise around AI and how effective it is. I think we should also start by saying we are obviously huge fans of AI and have found a lot of amazing use cases for it, but I think it is really, really important for marketers to know where to draw that line.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's booming and it's exciting. As you say, we've got lots of time for AI. We're using it in lots of different ways. But we are most definitely in some sort of hype cycle around it, and there are claims that it can and will do all sorts of lofty things, but the proof just often isn't there. And probably if we come away from this conversation with one piece of advice for listeners, it's establish that proof for yourselves, right? But we'll get there by talking about where you can and can't use it and how you can get value out of it without falling foul of its limits, its flaws, and where it actually could weaken you or work against you if you use it in the wrong areas. So yeah, it's an area where caution's needed, but there's a lot of potential too.
100%. Yeah, it's just knowing, where to be cautious and where to really accelerate everything.
Yeah.
So in this episode, we've got some kind of core themes that we're going to run through, and where we just think, take caution with AI. It might be used in the process, but it definitely shouldn't be the kind of end output or the driving force behind it. So we'll go through those and
replace the human element completely. There are places where you can just totally entrust menial tasks to AI, but there are places where the human mind, brain, invention is still the most valuable thing you can use.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, the first one that we've got here, which rolls on nicely from that, is strategy and differentiation. And the reason why I feel so strongly about this is because when you think about the way that AI works and its predictive nature, I mean, it is literally a predictive machine. It predicts what's going to be next in the series of words or outputs, basically, based on its input and its training data. So it basically excels at what it already knows, and what it's already going to predict is going to be, the next thing based on what you've said. It doesn't forge new ideas or new plans. So when I think about strategy, it's quite a messy thing. You've got lived experiences, you've got kind of market intuition, conversations, timing, what you might have just heard in the market from other sources that AI doesn't have access to. And relying on AI for strategy direction or to differentiate your business or your go-to-market is just going to give you something that has already been done and isn't unique to you and will guide you in the best way.
Yeah. AI isn't good at sparks of inspiration, or cross-referencing, unrelated ideas to come up with new approaches. AI can't go for a walk down the high street and suddenly think of a great way to stand out from your crowd of competitors and so on. And you've talked about it being a predictive machine, and that is true. An LLM, a large language model type of AI, essentially outputs words based on a probability spectrum, based on the tokens that reflect the words that go into it. I've spoken about this before, but essentially, in nearly all use cases, AIs on their own, the knowledge of the world that's stored in their weights and the model itself is not the value they offer. You're going to get the better results usually if you input extra information against which that model of weights applies. We'll talk about context and instructions and projects at some point, I'm sure. But in this area of strategy and differentiation, I think even that approach has limited ability to get you, above the competition, into blue sky thinking or into original ideas. because, like you said, AI is very good at taking what is put in and condensing it down based on probability. That doesn't lead you to new places.
Exactly.
And that's why marketers are still critical to creating, unique, memorable strategies that are going to produce outsized results, and, help them to step out of the, failing strategies that are, commonplace but no longer working, and things like that.
Exactly that. And I suppose it's quite hard, right? Because we see influencers and other businesses sharing the output of AI, and it looks like this amazing, well-structured strategy, and it is. It looks good. It's well-structured. The output is good, but what it actually is and what it means and what it represents is not unique. Like, it's just well polished and it looks quite structured, but so if you're a SaaS business and you ask AI generically for a go-to-market strategy, the output might look good, but it's going to be the same as every other single business.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of parallels with what everyone else is getting out of the system for similar questions. Like you say, it looks good. It's produced quickly. That's very, very gratifying to see. But, if you take the time, and you should, to read every word of it, you'll realise that it is a reduction. For the most part, it's very good at taking the information that's available on subject and averaging it, summarising it. You're not going to get a strategy that's unique to you or unique to your business. When you're watching the videos of influencers who are demonstrating these approaches, I think it's important to separate what they're saying from what they're doing. Many times I've seen people post a video where the headline is a huge claim about the result of an AI exercise being the best ever, world leading, category beating, and they do a very good job of describing it as such. But if you look at what's created at the end of that process and ask yourself, well, is it? I think the answer is often no. And so there is a disconnect here between what people want to hear and see, and therefore what's being provided in terms of content, and what's really possible to get as an output from these methods. And that's really important to stay critical as you view these, because I get caught up in it every day. Every day I'm watching a video that claims to be able to revolutionize something in this area. And every day I'm reminded that just because someone says it's so doesn't mean it's so.
This podcast is brought to you by Blend. We're a B2B website and demand generation agency. We work with ambitious businesses just like yours to create and execute effective demand generation strategies that drive pipeline for your business. We also recognize that your website is the most important asset you have in marketing. So we specialize in building scalable websites on HubSpot that convert the demand that you've created. If you want to find out more about our services and see real results that we've generated for businesses, visit blendb2b.com. Yeah, it's overwhelming, isn't it? It is overwhelming because, every time I literally open up the LinkedIn app on my phone, or every single podcast I listen to right now is talking about a brand new use case for AI. And you think, oh, wow, yeah, I could use it in that way. I could use it in that way. And I think this comes back to your point around safety around AI as well, which is something marketers need to bear in mind when they explore all these new tools.
Yeah, I mean, every AI tool comes with a warning about not putting in sensitive information, and then most marketers do it anyway, right? Let's be honest. But the risks are even greater if you start to cross-post information, if you start to try to integrate systems, automate them, give AI your APIs, your secrets, in terms of, connecting your platforms and so on. There are huge risks around hooking AI up to your business. But in the context of creating a business strategy, I think the risk is simply that you're going to get something that is already been done to death by competitors and doesn't stand out from the crowd, because almost no amount of audience insight, no amount of direction is going to get that predictive language model to come up with something that's never been seen or heard of before, in terms of how to go to market, what message to use, how to position yourself. That will be very mediocre.
Yeah.
We've seen it many times, and that's why you're better off retaining your very central role in that process. Yes, you can use AI as a tool, particularly as a productivity tool around that, and to gather some, baseline of information sure, fine, but get it to write that strategy, and you might be onto a losing strategy.
Yeah, and you can get it to kind of consolidate your ideas and structure them in a manner that works for you. Let it take the kind of competitor analysis, the context within your business, what you did last year, the results, where you want to be, all those kind of things. But the actual input and the ideation and like where you want to go and how your business is different should be coming from you, because AI does not have the kind of internal nuance of everything that we have as humans. And I think it's really important to remember that and not try to just outsource everything because you can.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. I think it's interesting to note how the biggest success I've had with AI as a sort of writing assistant is usually in quite narrow scoped exercises. A lot of input, a lot of context, very clear instructions, step by step, so I get to review every output and validate it and decide whether it's workable or not.
Yeah.
But when I fire off AI on a research project, yes, I'll get back a lot of information. Sometimes that information is useful, but it's always average information that doesn't stand out. So, word of warning.
For sure.
Cool.
All right, so that was strategy. The next thing that I've got here is the final creative output. And that goes for anything. I was mainly thinking of ads when I put this down, but we chatted before, and actually maybe this extends to all creative, actually. But I think when it comes to thinking about AI's role in creativity, for me, it's still very much a kind of a productive tool to use within the ideation process and the kind of conceptualization of something, and absolutely not the end product.
Yeah. I think that might come down to there's two factors at play there. One of which is like scale of organization and therefore what's at risk. And typically a larger, more mature business will have more risk and therefore will want and need stronger control around output, and AI output therefore is going to be less useful. But there's also like cost. To your point, if you're spending money distributing ads to your audience, using AI created output right now isn't a safe strategy for ensuring ROI on that spend. The ability to craft, we know that AI generated creative has A, telltale signs, B, mistakes, and C, if you don't like what you first get, it can be quite hard to maneuver it into the right position, because again, it's a different kind of model, but it's still a generative model, which doesn't respond to feedback the same way a designer responds to feedback. A designer who can take a layered design file and move things exactly where you want them. Not an option in the majority of AI tools that are available today. So there's definitely a variety of reasons and risks that mean that businesses wouldn't or shouldn't allow AI to be their creative, their final creative output.
Yeah, they're kind of like a creative assistant and creative collaborator along the way, but not like the creative director that's gonna give you the input on what to have and like get the output that you need.
You make a great point, which is, I think we're pretty close to AI having an application or a place within creating certain types of stock photography, as long as you're prepared to accept the flaws that are probably
we've
present.
seen it, right?
There are sectors, there are fields, there are applications where getting a stock photograph is nigh on impossible, right? And actually, AI can really help you out there, and it can also help in certain, more illustrative image creations on the abstract side. I don't think you can ask AI to create an illustration of your software's UI better than you can create your software's UI. But again, turning photographic material into something more illustrative is possible. But it probably isn't going to be your art director, creative director, or your UI UXer anytime soon. And actually, there's a big overlap there with the strategy discussion, because you need intuition, innovation, and the ability to sort of cut across subjects and themes and have ideas there that isn't possible in generative models.
Yeah, like again, it comes back to originality and the way that AI's even output, which is based on predictability. And you're not going to get something totally unique based on AI's idea. I think the ideation process can kind of be fleshed out through AI as well, but the actual original thinking in the first place, like when you first start the creative process for whatever you're doing, needs to come from you.
Yes.
And then you kind of got this middle bit, which is where you can use AI as a collaborator. And then the final output for me does need to come through a human. The point you make around like the back and forth that you sometimes have with these AI image generators, like I felt that pain.
Yeah.
When we've kind of been enhancing our YouTube thumbnails right now, I can't remember what the tool was, but it was a like YouTube thumbnail generator, which would give you the classic YouTube thumbnail look. But I must have wasted half a day like on this, trying to come up with like the right prompts, because I thought if I can nail the right prompt, that's it, we're golden. But honestly, the back and forth was just constant and so frustrating to try and get it right.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's like, again, like if you listen to the voices, this stuff is easy now. There's a tool for everything, and all you got to do is buy that tool. But the truth is, the reality is, and most of us will have experienced it, it is not that easy.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think, like you say, caution has to be applied, and you have to realise where you as a human have value to add and retain that value. And I think approaches to adopting AI maybe need to get turned, like inverted a little bit inside small businesses. I'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, I think the other thing within creativity as well is that authenticity is so valuable today that allowing AI to get in the way of you making that authentic connection with your audience is a really bad idea. So, for example, would it be better to create videos using an AI avatar, or to sit down in front of a camera and create whatever kind of video you can, no matter how rough, with your personal characteristics and opinions and viewpoints? It's obvious.
There you go again. Like, it's another case of just because you can do it, just because the software and the capability is there to do it, doesn't mean that you should do it.
Yeah.
And
what about turning written content into AI-generated podcast episodes?
Again, not for me. Like, maybe there's...
I don't know what the appeal is.
So I heard an interesting use case for this, though, at the Demand Gen meetup a couple of weeks ago, which was in sales conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So they basically took... I can't remember. Maybe it was a back and forth email chain or messages and proposal, and basically turned it into a podcast, which would be a conversation between the two, rather than just like a video talking through it. It was more of a conversation. I don't know, how that actually went. I think it was quite well received, but would everyone really listen to like a 10-minute podcast episode? Maybe. But it was an interesting, different use case for it.
It's good to try these things, right, and experiment. But even that feels like it fits in the sort of like identify an opportunity, a problem, test an AI, but don't come at this thing thinking, well, I can replace myself and my team and my function and do it with AI and not have to do it myself anymore.
Yeah, and you know what's funny with these things, right? These like AI podcasts and AI video generators, the people actually marketing these are still themselves.
Again, like separate what people say from what they do, right? It's always been a bit of a watchword of mine, and you can learn a lot by observing that sort of thing, which is okay. If this is so good, why am I still watching a human record this video, or are they hearing their voice?
Yeah.
Good point.
One last point on the creative output. I think it does come back to ROI again, because I suppose are we calling blogs creative output?
I think anything written that you share with your audience is probably a form of creative.
When you think of the ROI of a blog, it's typically going to be lower investment and lower return on a single piece of content than potentially, a big ad campaign on LinkedIn where you're spending tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. So the level of input and output you get from AI is different. A blog, which we know firsthand, can be crafted pretty well with AI, almost to 90% done through the use of, projects uploading knowledge, strict instructions on exactly what to do.
Yeah.
You can trust AI to do that because like the ROI expected and the level of input needed is less. If I'm running an ad campaign spending tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, are you going to trust that creative idea, which is, well, the creative output, I mean, which is, 80% of the importance of a campaign is the actual creative people see.
Yeah.
Are you trusting that to AI yet to get you maximum ROI on that investment?
No, exactly.
I don't think so.
I mean, even in the case of blogs, right? You still need to the marketer, the human, still needs to remain in the loop, right? You'd be unwise to simply let an AI generate content and publish it unchecked. If we all did that, well, one, we'd probably drown in content tomorrow, and it wouldn't have an effect. So even though AI there is performing a larger, more valuable task for you, and it's better suited to it, it still can't do the whole thing, right? So there is still that balance of human and AI involvement. But like you say, where visual and textual meets cost, that's where you've got real concerns that you need to monitor, and AI is less of a solution to that type of need in your business. Yeah, interesting point.
Cool. All right. Number 3 on my list, which I know for a fact some people will disagree with, but it's AI mass outreach, basically. Because for me, AI doesn't make it easier to connect with people, doesn't make it easier to engage with them. No easier than it is right now to, craft that outreach. It's still possible. AI just makes it easier to spam them, like spam on a mass level. And I feel like I'm seeing it firsthand, just getting waves of AI spam. I know when it's AI because I can recognize, the type and the language it uses. And I'm literally ignoring 100% of it. And I think everyone I know is as well.
Yeah. And even when it isn't AI, the response rates were always low, right? So adding in heaps of AI generated content, no matter how good it is hard to see a scenario where that doesn't create a negative impact on results from that type of activity because of the volume of noise that's going on. And to your point about engaging and connecting with people, there's that need for authenticity again, right? It's like you need to be a real authentic human, really, to get a response from someone in any channel these days, whether it's on social with video content or in their inbox if you are a seasoned, experienced, successful, rep performing outreach.
Yeah.
Hard to imagine a world where AI outreach doesn't simply drive up the volume massively and the results down because people can no longer sift out anything that's even remotely interesting.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've not been big fans of outreach full stop in terms of we'd rather see businesses get inbound operational, and to support that effort, if not do without it to some degree. But when you do it, it hinges on the ability to create that, like you say, that authentic connection in their inbox or on the phone and stand out.
Yeah. The thing that will happen, right, is we'll basically replace personalization tokens, contact, first name, company name, industry, job title, with these more kind of crafted things by AI, but you will be able to identify them as soon as they're used. Well, they already are. Like, you can easily identify when AI has pulled a piece of information about you and popped it into an email. Like, you can literally identify it. So whilst there are claims that AI tools can, amplify and improve the personalization of your emails, you can still identify it, and that's the point. Like, you can still tell when it's not crafted to be authentic, it's not crafted to actually build trust with me. And if you're relying on AI to build trust, then I think that's a dangerous game to play.
And they are just claims until they are proven and evidenced, right? And in a lot of marketing trends, marketing and sales have some overlap in this area, but in a lot of marketing and sales trends, the proof is often quite slow to come, if it ever does. And so I think if you're considering, adopting tools and strategies like this, then you've got to really scrutinise the ROI. To your point earlier. And for example, like outreach has always been low response, right?
Yeah.
And so even if an AI outreach mechanism can promise, a certain amount of leads or a certain amount of meetings booked, until you look at the pipeline created and the revenue created from that type of go-to-market,
Yep.
you cannot determine its ROI and its
Yeah.
value. And so you can't look at part of what you do in a go-to-market context in terms of pipeline generated, and then part of it in terms of leads booked.
Yeah.
Leads generated, meetings booked, because you're not comparing apples with apples then. And yeah, I think AI outreach, well, it's more complicated than it seems to do. First of all, I've worked with a few people who are trying to set it up, and it's actually really quite complicated. And I think the results will be disappointing.
Yeah. Yeah. And until I see the, proven case study for, we implemented this tool, we did this with it, we had, this amount of outreach, and this is what we got in return in terms of revenue, I remain to be, I doubt it,
Yeah.
I'll doubt it.
The other thing that
until I
happens
see it.
in like marketing trends is that the businesses with the best results are usually the ones selling that product
Yeah.
or tool, and it's not until you get results from other industries that are not related to that particular type of solution that you can really determine whether there's, because of course people who are looking for a certain thing are going to be more responsive to that thing, in the sales process.
Yeah.
I remember, for example, video emails.
Oh, yeah, Vidyard, when they were the craze, weren't they?
That spiked pretty quickly,
Yeah.
pretty hard. But I think same with conversational marketing, same with ABM, same with certain direct mail platform. Lots of things are easiest to sell when you're the one selling it.
Yeah.
And it's only when other businesses adopt it, apply it, and succeed with it that they sustain their interest over the long term, right? So give it some time in this area.
Yeah, I do maybe think there's a case to say, if you're currently doing outreach, mass outreach, and it is dire, it is the crappiest of crap outreach that you've ever seen, AI can make it mediocre.
Uh-huh.
But I think if you're already doing really great outreach and getting results from it, like, you'll still be doing that. AI might be able to take you to the next level to improve productivity.
Yep.
But it's not going to literally take you from zero to hero.
No.
Without any effort in there, without any strategy behind it, without already doing it effectively and just enhancing what you're doing.
Yeah. And if you do try it, whatever you do try, you've got to be measuring it in the same way, because lots of things get added to the go-to-market, like budget, but the result is still generated by the same activity in the same amount and closed at roughly the same quantity, but you've got this other thing that just doesn't really do anything alongside it, and that's quite sort of interesting to see when you see it. But this could be a case where you spend that money and you don't actually improve your results, and what you do get is still the product of how you were doing it before.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, the next point I've got here, which I think is a quick one we can touch on, is brand voice and your identity, basically. I think we're huge fans of things like Claude projects and custom GPTs because of the ability to upload knowledge and your voice and, essentially train a project on what you sound like. If you're going to rely on AI to do the talking for you, then you're going to sound like everybody else. You're going to sound generic. You're not going to sound unique. You're going to have no differentiation at all. And yeah, it'll often, hit the mark when it comes to resonating.
Yeah. If you ask a generative model like an LLM to produce an output based on nothing but its, weighted knowledge of the world, as it were, then you're going to get very mediocre, not unique, subpar results. If you can remove its need to rely on anything that it knows by giving it copious amounts of context, then in the case of the written word in particular, LLMs are quite good at generating outputs that are aligned to your needs based on your inputs. So once your brand voice is defined, if you can prompt an AI tool well enough, then you can probably get copy out that is in an editable condition and utilize it. But wouldn't recommend people use it to develop their brand voice, back to that strategy point, in terms of what your brand is and stands for and who you are and how you communicate it, all those things. That's where humans have the edge.
Absolutely.
But once you've got to the point where it's defined, you can, through projects, through custom GPTs with the right approach to prompting, you can remove the need for the LLM to really use its weightings or its knowledge of a subject at all, and just base its output on what you give it to reference, and that can result in good things.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I think the caution there is basically just using AI without any knowledge of your brand voice or relying on AI to produce that brand voice for you.
Yeah, not going to work. You've got to give it those instructions. You've got to give it that context, that style guide as well. And the more you can give it, the better, because the more you sort of drown out the average noise that comes from the model, and you can have the output based on your unique content and context. So yeah, that is an area where there's some value.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, did you have a point around like business size or scale to touch on?
Well, we talked about the fact that businesses of different scales will have different like risk appetites. Smaller businesses, nothing to lose. You might get away with using AI images and the odd AI generated ad and blog post. But if you've got any kind of success under your belt, you're going to be less tolerant of the flaws and drawbacks that are in those outputs. I think another challenge that needs to be treated with caution is there's a lot of hype around not only what AI can do, but how easy it is to code with it, to integrate, to connect. There's lots of developments happening in enabling you to connect different systems to AI. But again, mature businesses will need to take the security risks and safety risks and privacy risks associated with those types of initiative very carefully, right? I don't think it's wise in a business that's either mature or ISO certified for just anybody to buy an integration platform, connect their CRM with an AI language model, with their ad platform that can spend all their money, and let it run off and do its own things. That's just not wise, right? So you need to work with your IT department. You need to work with the right resources internally if you're going to go beyond using AI and LLMs in these sort of like, spot areas within your function and try to go horizontally across the organization. I think there's lots of exciting potential for AI to go horizontally across the organization, but it needs to be done with care. And again, you've made the point that there's a lot of claims out there that are as yet unsubstantiated. And in fact, when you go and try and replicate what's been claimed, it can't be achieved, right? That marketer's life story, I think. But it's happening again a lot with AI. My recommendation for people when it comes to AI adoption in the business is to set aside these lofty ambitions that are put there by influencers and thought leaders and vendors, and start with specific use cases. I encourage businesses to divide their business up into all the sort of different functions they've got. Divide those functions into all the steps that they take to deliver their output, their value, and one by one, find out, prove if an AI tool, in the first place, just an LLM like ChatGPT or Claude, can reliably do that task. If you can't reliably do that task, you've got nothing to integrate. You've got nothing to propagate or build upon. But if you can prove AI's application in that task, you've suddenly got two really interesting options available to you. One is to look at tools that are more specialized, more dedicated to that function, and whether they give you additional benefit, right? Most of these tools are APIing into these language models. So if you can't do it yourself with that model, I'm not confident that any tool will do it better for you, right? But if you've proven it, you can go up to those tools and maybe get more speed or ROI or better results, maybe. Or you can look at, well, I've now got this output. Where can I send it? Who can I give it to? And again, I'd do that manually in the first place. Pass it to your teammate, your colleague, your other department. Say, here you go. Put that into your process. And you can extrapolate AI across the business, taking that use case application approach. And sooner or later, you'll find that you might have quite a sophisticated set of tools working together. But you've come at it from a ground up approach and from an evidence-based approach, as opposed to this kind of like crazy lay off dozens of people, do everything with AI today, which just isn't working.
I really, really like that point you made around the kind of horizontal and then vertical shifts you can make with AI, because so many of these AI tools, especially when we're talking about language models, And, if they specialize in headline copy or ad copy, whatever it may be, they are actually just using the language model of like, Claude,
Oh,
ChatGPT,
totally.
Google, one of the core language models out there. And they're basically just plugging in a fancy UI, making it look good and selling it, which, might work for them. But actually, if you can prove it out first with the core language model, in a lot of cases that will do you well to then decide if you want to scale up to that new tool.
Yeah,
or not.
exactly. I briefly tested a platform that claimed to create marketing strategies using AI, and it was quickly obvious that it wasn't doing anything but prompting ChatGPT to get utterly mediocre information back. And I was like, well, that experiment was quick to conclude because it wasn't doing anything that was of any use whatsoever. But it proved the point that for the most part, if you can do it yourself on I don't know whether they're called like tier 1 or like layer 1 AIs, but if you can do it in ChatGPT or Claude, then you can maybe do it even better in a dedicated tool or platform, but not if you can't.
Yeah, prove it out first.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, that's all I've got on my list. Don't know about you.
No, that's me. I'm good.
Okay, cool. Well, hopefully that was interesting. I think just to say again, we are huge fans of AI here. We're definitely not dinosaur marketers thinking AI, has no place in this world and, humans are everything. There are so many use cases for AI. We've seen the benefits firsthand. We've got amazing use cases right now that we're implementing and using it for, but we just recognize the hype as well. And I think we try and be honest on here and just cut through the hype and basically, just try to give honest feedback about what we're seeing, what we've tried, and ultimately where to draw the line with this hype.
Practical information that people listening can apply repeatedly and successfully. My entire marketing career, I've always looked for things that can be executed repeatedly and with the same result. And it's always been a case that there's far more that you can't apply and get the promised result out of than you can. And I've always sought out and tried to share the things that if you take them home and do them, you'll get more or less the same thing out that I got. And I think that's the value we bring when we share our ideas.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, let's wrap it up there. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. If you did, drop us a like, follow, whatever it is on whatever player you're listening to. That would be great. And until then, we will catch you next time. Bye, everyone.
Thanks all.